So I'm gonna call this something like my first extreme or whatever Brian wants to name it because he's been uploading for me. Um, it's not really my first extreme, so let's explain what I mean by that. My first extremes, I don't remember when I first tried extreme or anything like that. But today I went back and tried extreme minimum item level no echo on some ARR primals. We did a little Ramu, we did a little Garuda. Got some nice low percentages, got lots of prog. Didn't get a clear, so we did it for I don't know, maybe 4 hours. A big chunk of stream. And I wanted to kind of share my thoughts because it's quite a journey and it's quite a departure for Brian and I. So we get a lot of questions regularly about why we don't clear more extreme Savage, and so I want to talk about that, and then I want to talk about kind of my history with things like that, with content that is harder than it has to be, right? For the sake of difficult content, which is what all scaled up content is. It's a video game making it more difficult because it can be, in trade for rewards that just allow you to clear more difficult content. So if you don't need to clear difficult content, you don't need the eye levels that drop from difficult content. And then kind of what this means for the future looking forward, and kind of just dump some thoughts here to answer a lot of questions that I think come up on Work to Game, but aren't necessarily something Brian and I are going to sit down and talk about, which is what gaming kind of is about. We're going to talk about things that I don't have time to talk about on Work to Game. So let's dive in. Why don't I do Extreme and Savage? There's a general rule. Historically, it's just been time. When you play an MMORPG or you play multiple games, especially if multiple of them are MMORPGs, you only have so much time in a week. Everybody only has so much time in a week. And as you go down your daily and weekly list of things you want to get to, you can only get so far. Even if you play 24 hours straight, you can only get so far. These games are designed to have huge grinds in aspects of them. And so the priority list for me has always been to make it as far down that list as possible with a heavy focus on things I can share with my friends. So if they want to do PvP, let's hop into PvP. They want to run maps, let's run maps. Let's spend time with friends, and then other than that, let's be as caught up as I need to be. So let's do MSQ if I need to do MSQ. If we're running hard content, then let's make sure I'm doing whatever daily or weekly things I need to do to be prepared and be respectful of other people's time. And then if there's anything really cool or fun added to the game, I want to at least give it a shot. Even if I don't get it to the end, I don't get the big reward, the big payoff. If you take Savage, Heroic, Mythic, Ultimate, Extreme, whatever word a game applies to the harder content off that list, it opens up a ton of time. And so it's not that each item on that list takes the same amount of time. That single item on the list is a huge amount of you have to play. Even if you're going to do it in minimum time, that's because you're part of like a static group of people that's going to do it at a set schedule, and now you've got to revolve your life around making sure that you're there on time, which means be there early, be prepared. You're putting in time throughout the rest of the week to prep. You're staying the full time, whether or not that's convenient for your life. Or you're in there with randoms, in which case there's tons of you're working through stuff you've already beaten before, or somebody else has already beaten before, and you're just wasting each other's time because that creates the convenience of being able to do it whenever you want, but it takes more hours in total. And so there's really no way to get through top level content without at some point putting a lot of time in. And so it just typically gets cut. It just typically doesn't make my priority list. So that's the answer to that. Now, where is my background with it? I've been in raid groups of varying levels of casual in World of Warcraft, from people that take it serious enough that people outside the game think you're nuts, all the way down to people that inside the game think that that's not raiding. I've done the full spectrum. Never like top 100 guild or any of that crap. So I'm not like, don't put in my bio like, you know, some people put these like, oh, you know, I can't even count the number of world firsts I've had. Come on, man. Method, limit, echo, they can all count. Like, no, you haven't. So I've rated what feels epic to me all the way down to what feels like I kind of judge myself for how casual it is. And when I quit WoW, in the back half of Pandaria, I skipped all of Warlords of Draenor. I came back at the end of Legion, and I came back in a very different way. Haven't rated beyond LFR since I came back, and that's for distinct reasons. I left for what I thought was entirely the game's fault. I thought the game had become something different than it was, and I thought it was 100% the game's fault. It had changed into something that was gross compared to what the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King and even Vanilla meant to me. And at some point I came into Final Fantasy XIV. There's a bit of a gap there, but I played during 2.0, and I've continued playing. Right now I play both as well as Guild Wars 2. And as I've gotten into these games and I've had a lot of fun with Final Fantasy, I've realized there are people playing Final Fantasy the same way I played WoW, give or take differences in the way the content is scheduled. There are people that take the game incredibly seriously. There are people that take it to the point where they are kind of embarrassed about how casual it is, or maybe they own it. And so there is a full gamut of I don't even know why I pay my sub because I barely play, to I'm mad at this game that it doesn't keep up with my 65 hours a day pace of consuming content, whatever that math is. So that still exists, and that makes me realize that part of why I left WoW was me. Part of why I left WoW was I had joined a community that takes the game pretty hardcore, and so I didn't have the ability to play the game more casually, and so when I got burned out, my choices to me felt like quit or keep going at this pace. I didn't see, I had the blinders on, and I couldn't see the entire middle gap of you could just slow down. Like you could just do less, and that's okay. And as I've come back to WoW, I play WoW closer to the way I play 14, and actually it's very doable. It's kind of nice. So I never had to quit WoW. I could have just shifted how I was playing. It probably would have meant that I needed to take a backseat in some of the people that I spent time with, and kind of let those friendships slide away just a little bit to distance myself from something that was creating frustration, not because of them, but because of what I wanted to be when I was around them. And so my history with raiding is World of Warcraft based. I've done EVE Online in big groups. I've played other games to varying degrees, but World of Warcraft is where most of my history comes from. So today on stream, that's what people saw. That's what comes out in the way I play. It's a lot of self-blame to raid successfully in WoW. In my opinion, when a party wipes up, if somebody else is making a mistake and they ask a question, then you can point out their mistake. But otherwise, you need to focus on what you can be doing better. Because odds are you weren't perfect. Even though somebody else may have dragged a bomb into the middle of the raid and then everybody died to that bomb, and so it's very clear that they caused the wipe, there's probably things you could have done throughout the pull that would have made it better. There's probably ways your rotation could have been better. There's probably positioning you could have done better. There's probably transitions between phases you could have done better. Adjustments when somebody else needed, hey, they ended up in a sticky spot, and if you'd adjust a little more, it would have let them recover a little faster. And so that's where a lot of that self-deprecating comes from, that kind of, I really need to pick it up. And sometimes I need to pick it up because it's objectively I'm the only mistake I saw. And sometimes I need to pick it up because other people are making mistakes, but maybe if I do better, they'll do better too. That's where that comes from. That comes from that history of raiding. I don't know if, some people commented that my UI is weird, and as I modified my UI throughout the stream live, they there were some people asking how I did that stuff or why my hotbars where they were, and the handful of people asking that, the moment the raiding got harder, the moment that we were struggling to get prog at a certain phase, the moment that happened, I immediately wanted my UI to look like my old raid UI, which is crazy because it's been a long time. It's been several years and years, since Pandaria. So however long that's been, that's a long time. And it immediately came back. Immediately I wanted things from back then because I'd grown accustomed to that. So immediately I felt like I needed a focus target macro, and I feel like my tank needs a shirk macro so that it automatically shirks to my second tank so that I can keep the boss as my focus target so that when an ad spawns, I can see both cast bars at the same time. And immediately I wanted to do all these things that help supplement the fact that we play without a DBM in the 14 community, and I wanted more information on the screen so that I could get out of things faster, especially when I tunnel vision. I'm trying to get my rotation back in order, and then the boss casts something that I need to move, and it's very frantic. 3 or 4 hours, you guys saw me say, you know what, that's good enough. Let's take a break, because without doing it more often. I'm not practiced at doing that level of focus more than 3 or 4 hours. So from here, what does that mean? Where does that fit within work to game and all of that? Brian and I's goal is to make work to game kind of an all-inclusive place, and one of the areas that we've been weak over the last, August will make 5 years, is in anything that takes more time than either of us can give. And so now that I have all of this time, I'm trying to do the things that we both have not had time to do, because Brian has put more time into the channel this year, but that doesn't allow him to go for like multiple relics and try minimum item level and try housing savage and all these things. So I'm going to go tackle those. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm getting asked, hey, are you going to do current extremes, current savages? Well, now we have a time for Endwalker. And so now that says, okay, that let me start to look at where that might fit in. Let me start to look at what that would look like. How do we make content out of it so that it's fun and engaging for the community isn't just something for my own personal journey? It can be both. And so, I've reached out to people for various collabs, and to try to make something where I can share that journey, because it's exciting to see, how you guys react and hang out with me as I go into something that I really don't have an enormous amount of experience with in the 14 community. And so I don't really know what it's going to look like. I don't know what Endwalker is going to look like. It's going to look different than the way I came at Shadowbringers, but I play the game like a minimum of 20 hours a week now. And there were months during Shadowbringers and definitely months during Stormblood where I was lucky to get 20 hours in for the month because I was working so much. And so I'm getting to a lot more stuff. And that's letting me try out other jobs. That's letting me try out, we've done a lot of crafting. I've done Lords of Verminion. We did some chocobo racing to the point where we were breeding. And there's all these things that I make time for because I have time. And Extreme, Savage, theoretically Ultimate, that all just falls under something that is, if I have the time, I'm interested. Now, those staying current is a constant consumption of time. Every patch, you've got to chase the new best in slot. You've got to go clear the new thing, as opposed to something like leveling up an alt. Once it's caught up, that's the bulk of the work. And so it is easier for me to want to tackle things that have an ending, rather than tackle things that, like, once I hop on that train, I've got to stay on that train. I've got to continue to commit time to capping my tomes every week, or, doing my re-clears every week, where you start losing 1 or 2 days every week to chores to stay on top of something. So I've been hesitant to chase the front end of things because I'm still enjoying that I have 5 days a week of progress that's mostly putting permanent things under my belt. And so, for as long as we have belts in 14. And so that's kind of my journey there. I wanted to share my thoughts today. I had a blast. It was awesome. People in the community come help me. I'm so sorry that I'm probably the limiter in a number of those pulls. I can see the meter. I know where I'm at when I get flustered with my DPS. It is weird in the same day to run Delibram, where you're seeing people put out 32,000 DPS. And then go run, minimum item level where people are putting out like 190, 290 DPS. Breaking 300 is like, wow, they're really on point. So it's interesting to see that. The stat squish is really going to shake things up there. For any of you that have never lived through a stat squish, don't worry about it. There's no need to worrying about it. Won't do anything. It could break some things. Odds are they're going to do everything they can to keep it from doing so. No need to stress. And that's really it. I just wanted to share my thoughts after my first day of doing Extreme. The plan is to do more of that, especially after 558 when we have World Visit. And then my plan is to be doing that same level of content in every MMO I touch. So I'd love to start making time when WoW is in a healthy state retail-wise to do Mythic Plus. And I'd love to, make some time to go see what is offered in the highest level of fractals and things like that over in Guild Wars. And as I look to add ESO as the 4th MMO this year, that's the only other one I want to fit in this year other than trying all the new ones. Sword of Legends, PSO, Blue Protocol, New World. I'm interested in trying those on launch. I don't know that I have time to be in their betas, and beta's a different subject entirely, how I feel about betas, especially within franchises that I don't have a history with. Yeah, that's my thoughts after my first Extreme. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to try to keep that on Tuesdays where it makes sense. Obviously Tuesdays are patch days, so I'm not going to go grind old minimum item level on days when I could be in new patch content, clearing story and all of that. But looking forward to what this means for my time in 14, and I will continue to share my journey through games and share whatever that means here, kinda.